rocking audience. Thank you, Bill, for such a kind introduction.
Please, you rock.
I am so happy to be here. Main reason being I was just in Denver speaking yesterday and it was -2. So for me, 34 degrees is spectacular. I'm just thrilled. So I am so excited to be here, and it's just such an honor to travel around the world and be able to share my message with people, because what I believe is each and every one of us has been given a unique gift and a unique message. And my message is actually to create the space for your message to come out. That's what I'm all about. And I'm so thrilled to be able to share this, and I so appreciate Bill for letting me be a part of this event. And what I want to talk about today is you. And I want to invite you to celebrate who you are. So right now what I want to do is just get the energy up a little bit. So if everybody could stand up, and as fast as you can, I want you to run around to at least 3 people, give them a high five, and tell them, hey, you rock. Keep it up, keep it up, keep it up. Okay, all right. Let's get back to our seats. Okay. Let me just get this screen back up. Here we go. Oh, there we go. Now you can see what I want to say to you. Come on. Okay. All right, so today, as I said, I really want to talk about how you are the only you on the planet. You see, what I believe is for a lot of us, we've been raised with a perspective that we're supposed to stay small and quiet and out of the way. Anybody growing up, did you ever have that experience? Yes. Did anybody ever tell you to just kind of get in the corner and don't shine and don't be a big person? Because when you're a big person, you make other people feel bad.
Yes.
Do we believe that? No, absolutely not. You know, when we show up and we're bigger, larger than life, and we are who we're supposed to be, we create the space for other people to be able to do the exact same thing. And that's really what I'm passionate about, is bringing that message to the world and empowering people to do that same thing. So let me tell you a little bit about me before we jump into the content of how I do this and how I coach and work with my clients. As a little girl, I was rather eccentric. Would anybody believe that? Yes, right? This mic is a little fuzzy. Is that okay? No, my necklace isn't touching it. Okay, let's see here. Give me a second so I just don't fuzz the whole time. I've heard that, so you know, I don't want to cause any more problems. Okay, so I won't move too much. I think that's the problem. I walk.
I think you fixed it.
I think I fixed it?
Yeah.
Okay, I think I'm good.
You're good.
Okay. So, as a little girl, I was eccentric Mara. And as a 5-year-old, I decided, for some very strange reason, I have no idea what got into me, that I was going to be a millionaire. I was going to write a book, and I was going to see all 7 continents before I turned 30. I don't know where that came from, but I was lucky enough to have parents that instead of saying, Mara, you're crazy, maybe you should plan that for when you turn 60, they just said, cool, do whatever you want. And so as a 29-year-old standing here today, I have already seen 5 of the 7 continents. And my plan in the next year is to make sure that I hit Asia and Australia. I've already been to Antarctica, which is a really cool experience. It's a really neat thing to be able to start to see all of those dreams come true. And that's what I wish and work with my clients so that they can achieve as well. And the interesting thing about being little like that and having dreams is, can you imagine that I might not have fit in? I might not have felt like I had a place. Have you ever felt like you didn't have a place? Yes. Anybody? Yes. Like it felt like maybe you didn't belong. And that was a really hard experience for me. And I was lucky enough to be able to hold on to who I was, despite the fact that I was teased a lot. So basically I spent most of my elementary school years hiding in the library. Lucky for me, I love filing, so I would volunteer to put all of the books away. And then I spent a lot of time in the corner of the playground. And I just decided that if they don't like me, then fine, I'll just be by myself. And I think it was because I had this gift that I had to share, and if I gave it up piece by piece, as I've seen a lot of people do, because it's hard to deal with all of that pressure. So if I gave it up, I wouldn't be able to stand here today to create the space for people who maybe had those similar experiences. And they're ready to start putting themselves back together, and they're ready to gather and recapture what it is that makes them unique, and actually start to celebrate who they are and be willing to get out there and shine. Is anybody ready to shine today? Yeah. Woo! That didn't... Is anybody ready to shine today? Woo! Bright and shiny, right? I love it. So here I was as an elementary school girl. The other thing that I gathered was a love for entrepreneurship. My dad is a general contractor, and so from a very young age I climbed roofs and negotiated my first contract to be the cleanup crew, and my job was to pick up nails on the job sites, and I made 1 penny per nail. It was hard work and low pay, but as a 5-year-old I thought I was getting a really good deal. And so eventually I started to negotiate and work in the office and just became more and more involved in entrepreneurship. And out of college decided that I was going to take over my dad's business. And one of the reasons was because I was teased so much by girls, I figured if I go into the construction industry, I'll never have to deal with girls. I'll be the only one. It's going to be great. So I decided to do that, and then I loved it. I really did. At one point I managed 14 or 15 construction projects. Then I started doing all of the bidding, the client meetings. And so here I was, this little blonde thing in my Van flats, jeans, and a red t-shirt. And I absolutely loved what I did until 2008. Did anybody have any experiences, personal experiences that you can think of that happened to you in 2008? Anybody? Yeah, it was a tough time for everyone. And in my case, we had a $7 million company, and we had about $100,000 a month overhead. And we were to the point where we even paid 100% of the health insurance for our employees and their entire families. It was something that my dad had always done, and he felt it was very important to take care of his employees. And so we had 24 employees, $7 million company, $100,000 a month overhead. And in 2008, October of 2008, the phone literally stopped ringing. And when your jobs shrink from 50 to 5, you cannot throw overhead off the boat fast enough to survive without it hurting really, really badly. And so we went from 24 employees to 4 employees. I went from a 6-figure salary to no salary. My husband and I had to short sell our house. I worked for free for a year, trying to figure out, do I stay, do I go, what's the best decision? And what I realized is if I stayed there, my dad was not going to have an ability to retire, because I may have lost $40,000 in my 401k where he lost over $500,000. He was, you see, he was 2 months away from retirement. His plan was to retire January of 2009, and he was going to travel the world. See, that's where I get the travel from. He was going to travel the world and do construction missions work in third world countries. It's something he's always been passionate about, and that was taken away from him. And so for me, that was the first seed. I've had 2 seeds planted, one from my dad and one from my mom, that has shaped what I've decided to do with my life and the message that I share with people. From the side of my dad, what I realized is I did not want to experience that for myself. Getting close to the age of 60, being 2 months away from retirement and having every dream that I had of retiring taken away. Did anybody have that experience where you had a plan and then all of a sudden it was completely different? It's devastating, and you have to sort of start over. And so that was the first seed, the financial seed, and I'll come back to that. The second thing that happened was, unfortunately, when I thought things couldn't get any worse, and I'd lost $40,000, half of what I had saved. I was 23 at the time. I'd saved $80,000 in my 401k. Got to kiss half of that goodbye, kiss my house goodbye, salary, all of that. And when I thought it couldn't get any worse, my mom decided that after 25 years of marriage, that my parents' relationship was no longer working for her. So they got divorced. So I literally was back to that place from when I was little where I felt like I had no place to belong because I didn't even have a family anymore. And I looked, it was sort of like looking down and seeing all of this rubble and saying, okay, what do I do with this? I have two choices. I'm only 23, so I don't really think I should wallow in this for the next 75 years. I've got to pick myself up and reinvent myself, figure out what I'm going to do with my life. And when I made that decision, I started to look at my mom's decision a little bit differently. And I was able to see why she made that choice. And over the last couple of years, as I moved into the financial industry, my heart also started to really want to understand what she had been through. So on the financial side, I started working with a company out of Denver. I was just there this weekend speaking to a group of about 250. And my goal there was to create a space for people to build a safe retirement. I never wanted someone to lose money again. I wanted them to have other choices. So I founded a company called FemmepowerU, and that's what I do on the financial side. I coach people so that they understand what their options are. And then on the female side, which is the seed that was planted from my mom, I started FemmepowerU. Because what I realized is that you can't separate money from the rest of your life. And that conversation has not really been allowed in our society, that we talk openly about money. How many of you, and we're going to get into this a little bit more, had great conversations with your parents about money when you were young? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-ish, 6-ish. So it's something that it wasn't really that common. And so what I wanted to do was take this concept and say, let's make the financial piece and who we are and how we show up come together. And my biggest experience with my mom was the fact that she raised 3 extremely independent, bright and shiny women. But when we moved out, she lost what was most important to her. You see, she lost her core value. Her core value was connectedness. And once we moved out, she didn't know what was wrong with her. She was feeling guilty. She didn't know why she was feeling guilty, so she felt worse about it. She was feeling shameful that she was unfulfilled, and she didn't know why. And it got exhausting for her. And finally, without knowing why she needed to end the relationship, she ended the relationship. And now that we've been able to work through this with the core value exercises that I do, she was the first one that I wanted to work on. And I said, Mom, let's try this. And it turns out her #1 core value is connectedness. So you can imagine that when she had a full nest of girls that were all connected to her, she was fine. The fact that she didn't really have a relationship with my dad wasn't that important because she had the ability to connect with us. My dad was out providing for the family so she could stay home. But once we were gone, she lost that connection. And that was devastating for her. So that's a little bit about my story and why I decided to go in this direction and why I love sharing this message. Because I think once we can understand the pieces of what it is that makes us unique and our story and why we're passionate about what we do, why we want to start businesses. I mean, this is basically an entrepreneurship camp, correct? Everybody in here started a business, interested in starting a business? Yeah. Yes? Yeah, so oftentimes what I've found is as women or as entrepreneurs or as female entrepreneurs, so I am talking to you guys in here as well, we sometimes get these desires to build a business, but we don't know what's most important to us because we've been taught not to be selfish, so we're not supposed to ask, what do I want? And so you build a business and then you feel trapped because you just made a business that you hate because you're doing all of the stuff that you don't want to do. And I know that's some of the things that Bill's been training on is how do you do that delegation? And so that's one of the things that I want to cover today. So let's move in. Oops. It is?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can point it out.
This is really irritating, isn't it? Okay. How about that? Okay, we'll see. I'm sure I'm gonna have to fix it again. So I have a question for you. Why do you think it is that there are so many entrepreneurs out there who are not making the income that they really want? What do you believe about that? Yeah.
They're great on the skill set side and maybe not so much on the business side.
So they're great on their skill set, but maybe not so much on the business, all of the different pieces that have to go together. Awesome, yeah.
Don't feel they deserve it.
They don't feel they deserve it. That's a huge one, absolutely. Other thoughts?
Self-doubt.
Yeah. Self-doubt, yeah, definitely. Or not even knowing who they are to even be able to doubt themselves. Yeah.
The belief is there's entrepreneurs, artists, and there's also management. So they might be great entrepreneurs who want to take risks, but they don't have the artistry or the creativity, and they don't have the management behind them back.
So there's entrepreneurs, artists, and management, and they might have one of those skills, but they might not have all three.
Not a clear focus on their message or what they want exactly?
So they don't have a clear focus on their message or what it is that they want so that they could even get out there and share that message. Absolutely, yeah.
They don't know how to market themselves.
They don't know how to market themselves. I think one of the key things with not knowing how to market yourself is we're told not to talk about ourselves. So if you're an entrepreneur and you're supposed to be out there selling yourself and you don't want to talk about yourself, you're kind of in a little bit of a problem, right? Between a rock and a hard place. Yes?
Could be that the entrepreneur thinks his idea is great, but there's not really a great market for it.
Okay, so there's not a market maybe for the idea that they have. Yeah, that could definitely be, for sure. Well, what I've done is really started to focus when I'm working with business owners on 3 specific areas. And I want to sort of draw this out so you know where we're going through the next 45 minutes or so with this giant pen. And I look at it as 3 A's. So what I believe is as you're setting goals for your business, your personal life, whatever it is that you want to accomplish, you need to do 3 things. You need to align, you need to affirm, and then you need to ask for what it is that you really need. So in the area of align, we have to deal with a couple things. The first, and I think one of the most important, is our money. Money's not everything, right? But it's kind of right up there with oxygen. Would you agree? Yes. Kind of important. So that's one of the areas that I really work with my clients. And I do a 3-day intensive workshop where we go through all of these in modules so that we can really start to understand who we are, how we show up, so that we can have a great experience in our business and our lives. I just recently surveyed a lot of the women that attended my first event, and they said the number one thing that they're dealing with right now is burnout. Does that resonate with anybody? Yes? Yeah. Burnout? Okay, yeah, it's one of those really tough things. And if you don't absolutely love what you do and you don't feel like you're working in your area of expertise, it can be absolutely exhausting. After we deal with our money, we have to look at our core values. And that is, what is it that is most important to me as a person? As how I was created, what are the things that are most important? And I'm going to show you how I do that in a little bit. Then what we have to deal with is our self-worth. And I love this area because I run women's groups, other networking groups for entrepreneurs. And one of my favorite things to ask an entrepreneur is, tell me your name, what you do, why you're amazing, and why we should love you. And I always get this sort of backing off, like, I don't really want to talk about why you should love me and why I'm amazing. But I think it's important for us to know that. Would you agree? Because when we do know that, we have no problem talking about our business. So self-worth. Then we really have to look at our vision and our dream. And we most importantly have to make sure that it's not someone else's dream. So we're going to talk more about that. And then in the area of ask, we have 3 things. The first is our self-expression. Then we have our image, how we show up, how we see ourselves, how others see us. And then we have our community. And these are the 7 areas that I work with. I have a ultimate empowerment system that's a 5-week class that I'm going to offer to you at the end of today so that you can maybe dig deeper if this feels like it's something that resonates with you and you want to jump in and start to put all of these pieces together. Because what I believe is, as a community, if we can come together and support each other as entrepreneurs, as we're really stepping out and looking at taking our message to the world, it's important to have the support. And this is a lot of stuff. But I think it's stuff that's very, very important. So let's look first at the money soundtrack. Sound good? Everybody up for that? Yes. All right, I know you guys have had 2 really long days, so thanks for hanging in there. Okay, so in the area of our money soundtrack, what I believe, let me explain that first so you know what I'm talking about. When we're probably 3 or 4 years old, we start to remember subconsciously little experiences about money. I believe our money soundtrack is made up of 3 different things. First of all, it's our experiences as a child, then our experiences as an adult, And lastly, things that society says all the time. So let's run through each one of those, and I would love to get some feedback from you if anything comes to mind. So first of all, what I believe is this song, as a 3 or 4-year-old, starts to play in the back of our head. And because it starts when we're so young, we don't even know that it's playing. And we listen to it for 30, 40, 50, 60 years before we even know that there's a song playing in our head. But we make decisions from this place. It's everything that we learned about money, even though we didn't know we were learning about money. Does that make sense? Does that resonate with anybody? Yep. So what I encourage people to do is first you have to turn up the volume and listen to the song. And then you have to decide, do I like this song? And if you don't, you have to give yourself permission to change the channel and create your money anthem so that you can really start to accomplish the things that you want to accomplish. So number 1, experiences as a child. One of the things, just to sort of open up the conversation, that I hear a lot is, well, my parents didn't teach me anything about money. In fact, they didn't talk about money. And so I would argue that if your parents didn't teach you anything about money or they didn't talk about money, they were teaching you something about money, which was what? Or that you don't talk about money, right? Scarcity, it's not there. You're not supposed to talk about it. You're supposed to be afraid of it. Anybody have any real vivid experiences or thoughts? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a child of 9, and my dad had his own store, so he paid for everybody's college.
Wow.
And he said, we don't have money, and you think the cash register is a money machine?
Yeah, so she grew up in a family of 9, and although her dad did pay for all 9 of them to go to college.
Not the last 3 months.
The last 3, so the first 6 got college paid for, the last 3 didn't?
Technology class. But
Okay.
he didn't pay for it.
Okay, so they each got their education paid for, and yet he had the attitude of, we don't have enough money. And that came up, I would imagine, quite a bit. Right. Any other thoughts? Yeah.
While I was growing up, I heard the story at least 50 or maybe 500 times about how my grandfather lost his job during the Depression as a milkman at a company he'd been at for 27 years and walked away with no pension, no money, no nothing. There is no such thing as security.
Got it. Wow. What a lesson to learn. Did everybody hear that?
Yep.
Okay, let me repeat it. So as a kid, he heard the story, he thinks between 50 and 500 times, that his grandfather during the Depression lost his job after 27 years and lost his pension. And basically he was taught that there is never security. You can never be secure around money. And when you start learning that as a little kid, that can really sink in and affect you as an adult. Yeah.
My parents were complete opposites about money. My mother was a worrywart, and my father spent and spent and spent, and he would come home with things like cars, dogs, furniture, artwork.
Wow.
And the only time I ever heard my mother curse was when he would do that.
So mom and dad had different attitudes about money, and mom was a saver, dad was a spender. And dad would come home with cars, dogs, and all sorts of other things, and the only time that she ever heard mom curse was when dad brought some new thing home. That's an interesting lesson to learn about money as a kid, right? Yeah, what about you?
Your typical line of money doesn't grow on trees.
Yep.
Save for the future.
Save for the future.
Watching my father be frugal. And then at the same time watching my mother be the risk taker.
Okay.
Taking deep resentment of my father, never wanting to grow up that way when all of my friends had gotten everything and I got nothing. And wanting to grow up to never be in that situation.
Right, so there was a lot of resentment around the fact that his dad focused on the fact that there wasn't any money when his friends got whatever they wanted. That's a huge one. One more, yeah.
I remember this tune playing in my head. My grandmother, who I adored, we grew up in the inner city in Philadelphia, and around the holidays, my aunt would call us in the car, and my brother and I, her and my grandmother, and we would drive to the rich neighborhoods to look at the Christmas lights.
Oh.
And like everybody does that, it's just like really cool and exciting. And we would go through all these fancy, lovely neighborhoods, looking at the decorations and scenes. And my grandmother would say, "Lord, will I ever?" And then she would answer herself, "No, honey, never."
Wow.
And as a child, what I picked up was that's not for me. And that's when I learned my anthem. That was one of the songs that I kept hearing in my head.
So let me repeat that one because that's a really powerful one. When she was young, she grew up in the inner city, and her grandmother would pile her and all of her siblings into the car, and they would drive to the rich neighborhoods at Christmas time to look at all of the decorations and the lights. And as they were enjoying everything, her grandmother would say, "Lord, will I ever?" And then she'd answer herself, "No,
Honey, never.
no, honey, never." And so she grew up believing that it's not for her. It wasn't for her because it wasn't for her grandmother. Can you see how these things will start to really sink in and affect those decisions that you make? And then you become an adult, and maybe you have some great experiences with money, maybe you don't. Maybe you lost half of your 401k like I did, or maybe you happen to be in a relationship, ended up divorced, and there was some infidelity around money and hiding money. I've run into that a lot when I coach with people that have just had a lot of negative experiences. Or maybe they got their first credit card, and since mom and dad never told them how to use a credit card, they got themselves into quite a bit of debt. There's a lot of different things. Anything that's resonating or coming up for you around money and adulthood? Yeah.
Well, I mean, I got a clear picture of it a couple years ago where my dad's is kind of similar. It was just like, that's for other people, that's for other people.
So even as an adult, your dad was being an influence, saying that being wealthy was for other people instead of for you.
That big house.
Yeah, that big house, those cars, the private jets, whatever. Yeah. Yes.
I would say almost no family has also conversations of macro issues of money, how it flows through their community, through nationally, even globally, in that event that does really affect them individually.
So they don't know how to manage or deal with money on a micro level within the home, but they also have no idea how it works in a more macro, global type of a picture. Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, and the impact of nobody learning in school or anywhere about money is that's one of the biggest reasons for divorce and fighting in families is money.
Yep. And she was just saying that one of the biggest reasons that people get divorced because we don't learn about it is money. We have a 50% divorce rate in this country, and of the 50% of divorces, 30% of those are due to money. When couples are surveyed, it's 30% of those divorces are happening due to money. So it is a huge issue. Yeah, one more. Excellent, I love epiphanies. Can you speak up just a little bit?
My dad was in commercial real estate.
Okay.
Made a good living. And he was also an alcoholic, abusive to myself and my brother and my mother. And I very much rejected as pretty much his whole who he was. And, I made a decision. I think sometimes, as a young child, that I would never do what he does. I therefore don't need the things that he has.
Wow. Wow. So he was saying that when he was growing up, his dad was a commercial realtor and made great money, but he was also an alcoholic and abusive to he and his brother. And so as a young kid, he made a decision that he didn't want anything that his dad had. He didn't want to be like his dad. And so he sort of blocked ever even wanting some of the things that his dad had. Is that pretty much a good synopsis? So you can see how starting with this as the key piece as we start to dig into who we are and how we show up is so important, because if we can work through the issue of money and move on to really getting into what we really want to do on this planet, it's really, really valuable. The last thing that goes into it is what we learn from society. And you had mentioned a couple things like money doesn't grow on trees, money is the root of all evil. I saw a bottle of lotion. I happened to be at a friend's house and looked on their counter, and they had a bottle of lotion that said filthy rich. And I had never thought about that one. But filthy rich is another one. It has that negative connotation. Any other ones that you can think of that maybe were thrown around when you were growing up?
Money doesn't buy happiness.
Money doesn't buy happiness.
Money doesn't grow on trees.
Money doesn't grow on trees. Yep. You have to work hard to make money.
Am I made of money?
Am I made of money? Yep. Bank of Dad. You know, you got those T-shirts. So it's just interesting to start to have these conversations. And what it does is once you turn up that volume and you decide, you know, now I realize why I've been making these decisions. Maybe I know a lot of people who use the conversation when they see something, I can't afford that. That's the first thing that pops up. And that often comes from the fact that we heard that when we were growing up, and it's our gut reaction. But I would challenge you to start to look at it a little bit differently. Because when you look at an object and you say, I can't afford that, what is it? Who are you giving your power to? The object. So imagine you're shoe shopping. I am a woman, I love shoe shopping, and you see a great pair of shoes, and you say, oh, I love those shoes, and I can't afford them. Now the shoes have power over me because they're too expensive. So I encourage my clients, and especially when we're working through this at the live event, and that we're going to be working through the webinar as well, I want to encourage you to start to change your language. It may not change the situation. You're not going to buy the shoes. But instead of saying, I can't afford those, you say, I'm choosing not to buy those right now. See how different that is? It puts you in a place of power, and you're the one that's able to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to make a different decision. And it gives you the power back. And then because you could afford them, right? If you don't pay your cable bill or your gas bill, don't pay your water bill, whatever. But you're deciding that you're going to make a different decision. And that's really what I like to encourage people to do, especially when they're looking at a longer term savings plan. If you're going to decide, yeah, thought?
So the same with teaching our kids, like if they say, oh, come on, Mom, it's just $2, or can we buy this, whatever. So it's just like, I choose not to give you that. Oh, how would you answer to a little one?
Well, teaching kids about money is something that is so important. And because most of us were never taught about money, it's sort of hard to figure out how to do it. Because even as adults, we're oftentimes confused about what we shouldn't do, what we're saying to ourselves, what comes out automatically and we don't even realize that we're affecting our kids. And so it is important to start to have those conversations. And maybe what I usually encourage people to do is start doing an allowance where they're having to do some sort of task around the house to make that money. And then they have the ability to spend their own money if it's something that they really want.
I do have, but in my personal situation right now is like not barely coming income. And so how would I say to them? And instead of saying, we don't have the money.
Well, we have other responsibilities and places where we have to spend this money. And when I was little, I was lucky enough to have a great conversation around money with my dad. He actually showed me the entire family budget. Every time money came in, he had this giant piece of ledger paper, and he was saving for probably 15 different things. A trip to Hawaii, a new surfboard, college, and he had all these things written down on paper, and every time he put $1,000 in the savings account, he would write 100 in each one of those columns. So he knew that when he got to his goal, he could go buy the new surfboard or take the family on the trip to Hawaii. And so I learned that lesson really young, but a lot of us weren't raised looking at the family budget, and so we're kind of scared, like, do I really need to bring my kids in on this? And obviously they don't need all of the details, but it is a good idea to start to have that conversation with them. So what I encourage is once you have moved through that, you've turned it up, you can tune it up, and then you're able to rock out. In other words, change your anthem to something that you want to believe about money. My money anthem is that money flows freely to me and through me. And that's what I believe about money. And it happens. It flows all the time. It always shows up. Every opportunity that I think I need to take the next step in getting this message out to the world, the money shows up. Because that's what I believe, and that's what I always say. The other thing I always say is I always win raffles. And you better believe I always win raffles. I love it. Just start to think about that language a little bit. Okay, ready for step 2? Let's move on to our core values. So we talked a little bit about this, and I used my mom as an example. So step 1 is all about my dad, the money, FemmepowerU, everything that I learned from him. And step 2 is really my heart and my ability to connect with my mom and other women and men that are having these similar experiences. So what I believe is that we have 5 key core values as human beings. And each one of them is different. And we have, basically it's like a trunk. And that trunk is the most important thing to us. And then from that we have 4 roots that are our support system. And so we each have these different things that are most important. For my mom, her key core value is that connection. The ability to be connected to another human being. And what I find is that oftentimes we don't even know that these things are important to us. And so when we start feeling unfulfilled, we don't even know why. And it gets exhausting because we don't know, so we feel like we should be okay. But if we're not experiencing the things that are most important to us on a daily basis, do you believe you might have a problem? Yep. Right? And once you know, then you're able to live the life that you really want to live because you know what's most important. And you can value yourself enough to give that to yourself on a daily basis. And this, I believe, is extremely important for entrepreneurs. Take, for example, the core value of freedom. Does that resonate with anybody? Anybody go, yeah, that sounds, yeah, freedom? Anybody else, freedom? Freedom, freedom?
Sign me up.
Sounds good, right? It just, your body sort of tingles when you hear the right words. And so if you're starting a new business and you end up being stuck doing all of these boring tasks and you're in the office all the time, and one of your key core values is freedom, are you gonna have a problem?
Oh, yes.
Big time. And you're gonna end up hating the job that you thought you were gonna love because you got to be your own boss. But because we don't oftentimes know what's most important to us from the beginning, we can get stuck and end up not being able to build what's most important. So let me show you an entire list, don't be overwhelmed, of core values.
Do we need to see what those were written, the white we couldn't see the words?
Let me go back and just, okay, it just says supporting core value. So those, sorry, the lighting's a little, and so here is a whole list of potential core values. I'll read a couple to you because it's a little bit small. Recognition, joy, balance, orderliness, fun, health, spirituality, openness, privacy, mastery, achievement, clarity. Any of these resonating with anybody? Can you shout out a couple words that sound like, hey, that might be me?
Mastery.
Balance? Mastery?
Fun.
Fun? Hey. Leadership? Love it.
Health.
Health? Service? Adventure. Yeah. Freedom. Yeah.
I actually did that. I thought I was doing the right thing, and I opened an office, and I was married and chained to my desk 9 to 5, and I hated every minute of it.
Yep. So she started an office and ended up being stuck in the office 9 to 5 and hated it and probably wondered why.
Yeah, and I felt like this is what I wanted. Why do I hate it so much?
This is what I wanted. Why do I hate it so much? Yeah, and that's something that we can really start to, once we know what our key core values are, then we can start to honor those. And so in the 5-week course that I'm going to be teaching and at the 3-day workshop, we spend a lot of time, and there's a questioning process that can get it distilled down so you're able to figure out what those 5 core values are. Because looking at this is sort of overwhelming, am I right? It's like, oh my gosh, so many words. But there's specific questions that you can ask yourself that will start to pick out those core values. And once you know that, you can even use that in your marketing language. Because what I believe as entrepreneurs is we have a message, but we also have an ideal audience. Would you agree?
Yes.
You know, we have those clients that we love working with, and we have those clients that we don't love working with. Anybody ever had one of those clients that you don't love working with? So you know you want less of those and more of your ideal clients. And when you know your core values, you can actually use these in your marketing language. And then you're going to be attracting people that are attracted to the same things as you are. And they're going to show up, and those ideal clients are going to be there, and they're going to love working with you because you value the same things. Does that make sense? So for me, here are mine. Love, independence, adventure, community, and expansion. So everything I do with FemmepowerU and FemmepowerU is around creating that for myself and that experience for my clients. And everything else that doesn't fit into that, I delegate to someone whose key core value is organization. They run my office, and I'm out there doing all of the adventurous stuff because my assistant Sue could care less about that. She loves filing papers. So it works out perfectly. And once you know that, you can actually start to build a team that can support you. All right, we're gonna have to move quickly through the rest of them. The next thing, once we get into the affirm section, there's 2 things. There's our self-worth, and then there is our dream and our vision. So what I love to do is focus on what I call the you factor. This is what makes you unique, different than everybody else on the planet. See, when I was born on this planet, God in his infinite wisdom decided there should only be one Mara. Thank the Lord. Because I think it would be a little overwhelming, and my husband certainly couldn't take 2 of me. But each one of us is given some of those unique gifts, right? And what we're taught when we're young is not to focus on those. Stay small, stay out of the way, and it can start to shrink us. And what I'm inviting you to do is instead step into those things that make you unique and amazing. Would you be willing to do that? Does that sound something that sounds interesting, fun, a little bit adventurous? Because once you're able to step into that, you show up differently. You know why that client should work with you, and you have no problem telling them. Does that make sense? So when I'm working with people, what I like to do is just have them start to focus on, sort of put the I'm not allowed to brag in the corner for a minute, and start to focus on what it is that makes them amazing, and all of those different experiences. I've worked with a few different clients who have gone through years and years and years of verbal and physical abuse. And what I see that happens is every time someone says something negative about them, they lose a small piece of who they are. And one of the women that I'm working with right now went through 21 years of verbal abuse. And now she's in a direct sales company and wants to get out there and become an entrepreneur. And she's feeling extremely discouraged because she doesn't feel like she has the confidence. So what I encourage people to do is write down those things and give yourself permission to write 3 amazing things about yourself every single day. And you can never repeat the ones that you used before. So this could be anything from, oh yeah, I remember in 3rd grade I scored a goal in soccer and it felt really good. You know, you got to start with the easy ones, and then you can really start to dig in. So would anybody be willing to be brave enough to tell us one of the things that's absolutely amazing about you? Yes. Compassionate. I love that. Excellent. So that would become one of the legs of your table, if you will, that builds you up and supports you so that you can show up in the world. Compassionate. Yes. Tamlin. Heartfelt. Yes, you are. Yes.
I love to be a blessing.
To be a blessing. You are a blessing. You are a blessing. Yes.
Passionate.
Compassionate. Passionate? Passionate. You are passionate. I can see that about you. Absolutely. Yeah.
My humor.
Humor. I love it. Yes. Anybody else? Yeah.
Full of joy.
Full of joy. You are full of joy. You bring joy to me. Thank you. Yeah.
I'm really good at encouraging people.
Encouraging people. I can see that. Absolutely. Yes. Spontaneous. I can hear it in your voice. Woohoo. Yes.
Intercessor of prayer.
Intercessor of prayer. Yes. Yes, you are. See how good that feels? If you wouldn't mind, if you would turn to a neighbor. This is one of my favorite activities, and we do this a lot at the live event because it's all about interacting and seeing each other face to face and supporting each other. I want you to turn to a partner, and you're just going to do one. Say, I am whatever it is. I'll explain it, and then you guys can do it. I am compassionate. And then I want the other person to look at you and say, that is true. I believe in you. Okay? So I am compassionate. Have the other person look you straight in the eyes and tell you that, and just experience what that feels like to step into owning that. Would you be willing to do that? Yes. Okay. So one each, and if you really want to, you can do 2. So you say, I am, fill in the blank, and then that is true, I believe in you is your response if you're the listener. Does that make sense? Okay. Go ahead. Start.
What about you? That is true.
I believe in you.
Let's do that again.
Great jacket. I love it. Did everybody get a turn? You're using your own word, so you're telling that person, I am whatever. I am compassionate, and then there's, okay, so whatever that is, and then you're going to respond that you see that in them.
Okay, but then we go on and pick other words?
You can choose other words if each one of you got to do one. Yep. Okay, did everybody get a chance? Okay, I want to hear some feedback on how that felt, both as the listener and as the person being able to share. Anybody? Fabulous? As both, as the listener and the person sharing?
Oh, yeah.
Does it feel like it's something that you could do on a regular basis with people?
Yes, we have to.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That heart opened all by itself.
Your heart opened all by itself. I love that. And you were able to make a connection. Love it. Love it. Anybody else? Interesting experiences?
It's very heart opening.
Heart opening, yeah. And to look at somebody in the eye, even if you don't know them, and hear them claim something, you can, all of a sudden when they say that, you can see it in them. Absolutely. Like, I bring joy to the world. Of course you bring joy to the world. I can see that in you. Of course you do. And that's a cool experience to be able to have. And that's what when we get to the community section, that's really what it's all about, is creating that community so that we feel supported. And once we know, first of all, we've dealt with the money soundtrack, and we know who we are and how we deal with money, and we can change the way we make decisions. Then we understand our core values and what's most important to us. And then we can easily and effortlessly say what it is that makes us incredible and value ourselves. We're unstoppable. And that's why I say that when you understand your you factor, or what it is that makes you unique and how you show up, you can double, triple, quadruple your income, because you're looking for people that you're able to connect with, and they're going to see that in you, and they're going to want to connect with you. They're not going to care about the price or the cost of your service. They're going to care that you're an amazing, incredible human being who brings joy to their life. And they want that every day. That's really what being in business is all about. Do you agree? That wasn't. Do you agree? Yes. Yes, I love it. So step 4 is dealing with your dream and your vision. And the thing that I like to focus on in this area is a word that gets thrown around a lot, which is success. Success, I think, is a very charged word. Would you agree? It's something that maybe we were given a definition at some point in our lives, and maybe we don't agree with that definition because it's not something that we want. Take, for example, 2 completely different people, one that wants to have a multi-billion-dollar business, and one who wants to stay home, maybe have a smaller business, and be able to spend time with their kids, whether male or female. And both of those could be seen as success, depending on how we define it. So what I like to do is give, especially business owners, permission to create their definition of success. So that when they hear that word, instead of feeling like I don't measure up to whoever's definition it is, you can feel like I do measure up because it's my definition and I am creating what I want in my life. Does that make sense? Yeah. And when we really know what success is, again, we're unstoppable. It's something that we're able to embrace and jump into. The last thing I want to work through is our area of self-expression and asking. So these are some of the most incredible quotes that I could pull out, and since I do work a lot with women, I picked 4 women. And one of the things that I love is how self-expressed people make history. Yes? So think of these examples. Joan of Arc is the first one. She said, "I am not afraid. I was born to do this." Can you imagine being in a place in your life where you just know it? You own it? That's self-expression. Susan B. Anthony is the second one, and she said, "Failure is impossible." Simply, failure is impossible, and think of all of the amazing things she accomplished while she was here on this planet. Next, Amelia Earhart. "Courage is the price that life exacts for granting peace with yourself." When you're at peace with yourself and who you are, and you know that, you can create an incredible impact in this world. And lastly, Rosa Parks. She said, "I have learned over the years that when one's mind is made up, this diminishes fear. Knowing what must be done does away with fear." And whether that's in your personal life or your business life, when you know what must be done, when you know you need to share that message, when you know you've been called to make an impact in this world, whether that's on a global scale and you want to get out and speak to millions of people, or you want to be the best parent or grandparent you could possibly be to maybe just the 3 kids that are in your house. It doesn't matter. It's all about how you show up and being self-expressed and creating the space for other people to be able to do the same thing. And lastly, community. And this is my favorite community web, because I believe that as we build a community, once we know what's important to us through going through steps 1 through 6, we're able to actually step into and embrace other people in that space. And we're able to ask for what it is that we need from them. And then we're able to give back. So I always encourage people to be connecting. And why I use this web is if you look from one corner to the other, I think Facebook has helped us a lot, because you go on and you become a friend of somebody and it's like, oh, you have this friend in common, right? I love that about Facebook. Oh, you two know these same people. But sometimes we don't think of blending our networks. Maybe we have friends that are at church or from school, and then we have friends from our kids growing up, and you never thought to introduce those two, but they might be a great connection. And so when you have that attitude of giving back to your community and building that community that supports you, and then you're able to ask for what you need because you're also giving back, you can create incredible synergy. And that's really what the Financial Power U and FemmepowerU communities are all about, is creating synergy where we're working together and we're supporting each other for all of our goals and dreams. And we know the definition of our community members' definition of success. So we can encourage them in that, even if it looks completely different from our definition of success. So just to review, it's align, affirm, and then ask. And when you're able to do that, I honestly believe that you can, when you really know who you are, you can double or triple your income. You can grow a business that you're passionate about. You can get the support that you need in order to be able to take your message to the world. And that is what this is all about. And I've been able to do that. I want to share a couple of my pictures. My mom is the one in the 2 large pictures. She was there at my very first women's event that I ran. It was such a blessing to have her there. I've had the chance to meet incredible people like John Assaraf and Sharon Lecter. This summer, my husband and I sailed the British Virgin Islands on a sailboat, just the 2 of us. So we have been creating a life that we absolutely love together. And that's what I believe can be done when we work through these different steps as a group. So I'm going to share with you my favorite quote. I keep this on my cell phone to remind myself all the time. Don't you dare, for one more second, surround yourself with people who are not aware of the greatness that you are. Isn't that amazing? I love that. You are all great, incredible people. Incredible people here to make a huge impact in whatever it is that you want to do on this planet. And my goal is to be here to support you. So I have a couple questions for you. Are you ready to really live that life that you deserve? Yes? Yes. Yes? Are you ready? Yes. Say, I'm ready. I'm ready. Excellent. How about to change the world and whatever that means to you? Are you ready? Yes. Say, I'm ready. I'm ready. I love it. How about to make history? Anybody want to make history out there? Yes. Woo! Doesn't that sound amazing? I see some hands in the back even. All right, how about to discover your U factor, really own what it is that makes you unique? Are you ready for that? Yes. Say, I'm ready. I'm ready. I love that. And then how about to double your income? You ready for that? Yes. I'm ready. Say, I'm ready. I'm ready. For even more wealth. For even more wealth. Say, I'm ready. I'm like you really mean it. Yes. I'm ready. I'm ready. For even more wealth. For even more wealth. I love it. All right. So